Get ready for sports, news, and entertainment. All right here, your 7 minutes with Simmons starts right now.
Big time experience behind the bench for the Hamilton Kilty B's 2025-2026 season. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. My name's Christian Simmons, your host of 7 Minutes with Simmons. Right back on the show. Had a day off on Wednesday. Had to do it. You know, the Ice Dogs training camp was insane. I was on full tilt mode for 2 days, eyes wide open. I needed a day to kind of just shut it down, get the engines back to neutral. But we're back to work here, and excited to get back into the GOJHL landscape. Got a couple things on the docket today. Gonna do a recap. You know, we got a couple of games to get through, a couple of nights to capture in my absence. We'll take a look at some teams that have continued to find success here in the preseason, and maybe a few who have continued to struggle. And then we're going to get into the Hamilton Kilty B's. We're going to talk the new coaching staff. We're going to talk some of the new names. We're going to talk about the new direction that the organization is taking, which is extremely exciting for myself, and I'm sure anybody else who's going to be a regular at the Mountain and a regular on every Thursdays to cheer on this Hamilton Kilty B squad this year with a whole bunch, a cast full of fresh faces, not French. I don't know that there's any French players. Well, maybe I'll have to go through the roster. Maybe my subconscious is just presenting that information for me. I mean, you never know. I don't know. We'll have to check in on that. But hopefully everybody's had a great couple of days. Myself, I had an interesting one today. Did my first ever professional photo shoot. Got my headshots done. I had makeup on my face. I didn't realize that this was even a thing. I mean, I guess I should have known as a broadcaster. You know, there's hair and makeup, and it doesn't matter your gender. You still want to look great on camera. And today, I sat on a bar stool while this woman touched me up. Concealer and foundation or. The powder and my face was so itchy, man. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know how these girls do it because my 2 seconds after she was done, she's like, all right, you're good. And I was like, I got to itch my face. Like, what's going on? But that was fun. Definitely uncomfortable. I'm not a model by any stretch of mine or your imaginations. It's tough, man. A lot of pressure. You feel it. I'll tell you one thing. There's a huge difference between being a broadcaster and like an on-camera personality and to be a model. Huge difference. So that was definitely a little bit tough. But anyways, let's get to the matter at hand, and we'll start with a recap of the last couple of nights. And let's go back a few. On Tuesday and Wednesday, there was a back-to-back. The St. Thomas Stars and the London Nationals had two wildly different games, and we'll get into those, starting with the first game on Tuesday, which was Victoria Honda, which is the AAA program from Michigan, actually. So I said in a previous episode I had no idea who this team was, and that's because they're not from here. So it made sense that I was a little bit lost there, but anyway, Stratford and the Victoria Honda squad do battle at the Rotary Complex in Stratford, and the Warriors had their way. That's a 13-1 result there. A massive performance for them. 43 shots on goal, went 2 for 5 on the power play, and that's their first victory of the preseason. Comes at a great time for them as they get ready to really ramp it up here as we get towards the latter half of I guess you could say the first week or the first week of preseason, and then into next week, the games, we're getting closer to the opening night. I believe in Hamilton, it's the 4th. So 1.5 weeks left to go here. So great time for Stratford to get, their legs underneath them, start filling the back of the net. And they did that against the Victoria Honda squad from over the river. Taking a look at the box score, Jonas Schmidt with a great night. He had a hat trick. Vader on the score sheet as well. Brown had 1, 2, That'll do it. Schmidt actually had 4. If I'm, correcting myself, he had a 4th goal with 33 seconds to go in that third period, and Stratford had their way. That was game 1 on Tuesday night. Number 2 on Tuesday, the London Nationals and the St. Thomas Stars see each other for the first of a back-to-back Tuesday and Wednesday. And on Tuesday, St. Thomas, blow them out, 11-6 performance. And for London, a couple of former Hamilton Kilty B's, Nicholas Kiss and Blank Jankovic getting on the board. Dalal with a 2-goal performance in that first period. And then Caden Lave in the third put one up on the score sheet for the only in that third period. And then St. Thomas on the other side had 6 in the first period, 4 in the second. They put up 10, capturing a 10-5 lead as they approached the second intermission, and no response from London in that third period. Outshot 41-25 were the London Nationals. Burgess on the score sheet. Cameron as well. He had 2. Thorgood with 1. And Piskorowski in that third period with the final marker as St. Thomas took their first victory of the preseason in big-time fashion. Lots of penalties in that one and lots of power plays on both sides, and both power plays were relatively effective. So you like to see that from both London and St. Thomas. And then you flip the page on Tuesday and into Wednesday. St. Thomas and the Nationals go to work once again, and this time London responds. They'll get a 5-2 victory, going 1 for 2 on the power play. So London, 2 days, 2 great power play results. Austin Pomerleau gets on the score sheet. Caden Lave as well, his second goal in as many nights in London. Gets it done on home ice at the Western Force Fair Sports Complex. And then also on Wednesday night, the Waterloo Siskins and the Hamilton Kilty Bees go to work. And the members of the Hive will be happy to hear this. The Bees get their first victory of the preseason. They take this one 3-2, trailing after the second period. They come out for a big-time third period, and it's Reed with 2 huge goals, one early on and another one just 5 minutes later. And that does it for Hamilton as they just squeak by the Waterloo Siskins on home ice at the Harry Howell Arena. And that's great news for Hamilton. Struggled early in the preseason, so nice to see them get a victory. Luca Campolo, also your goal scorer in the second period, a returning player. Nice to see him back in the black and yellow. Now, last night on Thursday, the Junior Canadians and the St. Catharines Falcons go to battle, and the Falcons get it done. It's 5-0 there, 38-17. The shots, the Junior Canadians totally outclassed. Swan, Ali Mustafa, the new assistant captain, Ben Arnold, Flynn, and Caden Bell, the Niagara Ice Dogs product, back from training camp. He gets on the score sheet, the most recent signee for the St. Catharines Falcons, and he makes an impact right away there in the latter half of that third period. The Falcons with a big-time victory. Welland still yet to receive anything in that win column. They're 0-4-0-0 here in the preseason, and one of the teams who have played a larger chunk of games here in the early going, and still winless in their 4. So unfortunate there for Welland. We'll see if they can get back on track. Also, last night on Thursday, Ridley College Tigers take one over the Brantford Titans as the Titans also continue to struggle. Adam Stipin and Craig on the board for Brantford, both in that third period as they try to climb the ladder. And for Ridley College, it's Walker, Niswana, and Stewart all getting on the board as they contribute to a 3-2 victory for Ridley College. Great performance for them. 34-30 the shots, 1 for 3 on the power play went the Ridley College Tigers at the Wayne Gretzky Sports Complex, and then at the Meridian Community Complex in Pelham, Fort Erie and the Panthers go to battle, and the Pelham Panthers with a big victory there, 2-1 your score. Pelham goes up 2-1 after the first 2 periods, and no response from Fort Erie in the third. And Pelham gets it done, outshooting their opponents heavily, 31-14. The result there, and the Panthers on a roll this preseason. They're 3-0. Love to see that from Pelham, and I'm sure the fan base does as well. Looking to make some major strides in the Eastern Conference this season. Also last night, the Listowel Cyclones and the Elmira Sugar Kings go to battle Listowel with a big performance there. 40 shots on goal, 2 for 6 on the power play, and 6 find the back of the net. Beisel with 2 goals, DeBoer with 1, Gear, Leanders, and Fisher as well getting on the score sheet. And the Cyclones get their first victory of the preseason at the Dan Snyder Memorial Arena. So lots of great stuff happening there. And how about that for the recap? 10 minutes into this podcast, haven't even dived in to the staff and some of the Hamilton Kilty B's content that I had planned for today's episode. And you know what? We're going to run a little bit longer because I'd love to dive into this. And for Hamilton, really exciting. A program that, last season squeaked into the playoffs, had a tough result in the first round of the Eastern Conference, Sutherland Cup Eastern Conference round robin, or I guess you could say in the first round. We'll just put it that way, nice and simple. They had a tough go against the St. Catharines Falcons. And I think there was a little bit of a culture issue. Love to see what they're doing. They're bringing in some very experienced brass and some bench bosses that I think are really going to help this team take that next step. And it starts with head coach Chris Gratton, the new head coach at that. Played 2 seasons in the OHL, 55 goals in his draft year. He was the 3rd overall selection to the Tampa Bay Lightning and went on to play 15 seasons in the NHL. Had a 30-goal season as well in the 96-97 season with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So you can't ask for much more for a guy who's going to come into a junior B locker room and bring that pedigree, bring the experience. He knows what it takes, not just to win a Sutherland Cup, but to be a elite player at, the major junior level, the junior level, the minor hockey level, and then at the next level at the the national level in the National Hockey League with that 30-goal season. So love to see that. I think it's exactly the direction this team needs to take. And following in his footsteps would be the new assistant coach, Brian McGrattan. Also has a fantastic resume. 5 seasons in the OHL, drafted in the 4th round of the NHL draft, played over 300 games in the NHL. He's also a player development guy and has a fantastic heart, loves to support charities. And there's lots of other shades and layers to Brian McGrattan that you have to love as he comes in. But for me, again, it's about the experience. This guy brings a ton of it. And the combination of him and Chris Grattan are going to do a fantastic job navigating a team that's going to look to find an identity here at the beginning of the season. Just 15 returning players. There's lots of new faces, and we'll get into them as we get deeper into the season. To name a few, Jack Bezemer, Brian Miller, Kyle Burton, Porter Fabry, some of these guys, from Hamilton and elsewhere, some coming from Junior A, some, 2009 born, coming from, minor hockey. And then there's actually, Jake Bezemer from, Blythe Academy. So a diverse group of players coming in to hopefully a much more successful team than they were last season. And I think Hamilton's poised to make some steps. But you got to see steps also from some of those players that were around last year. Lucas Kissel, Quentin Lyle, to name a few. When you really look at it, your main leadership core is gone. Ryan Woodburn not there anymore. There's a lot of holes in this Hamilton Kilty B's lineup, and you're going to look to guys like that. You're going to look to McAfee Rankin. You're going to look to a Kissel or a Lyle or a Campolo. You're going to look to those guys to step up and lead the way on and off the ice, and I think with the new coaching staff, they're going to be put in a position to do just that. So lots of exciting stuff in Hamilton. I'm fired up. Can't wait to see you guys at the Mountain Arena, and happy to welcome some of these guys to the Hive, and we'll have a chance on September 8th to get to know some of these guys. Media night on September 8th, so expect lots of content following that evening as we'll get a chance, and an inside scoop and get to know some of your bees. But until then, that's going to do it for the Hamilton content and the GOJHL recap. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the episode, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you feel like it. It's free. And also hit the bell so you don't miss a single episode. We'll see you next time. Peace.